Good morning. I'm Rosemary DiTrolio, and you're listening to The Lightwalker's Path. It's a place to develop new insights, find your soul's purpose, hear enlightening conversation, and be inspired. Good morning. I'm Rosemary. I'm your host at The Lightwalker's Path, and we're streaming on multiple platforms. So you can join me every Tuesday Eastern Time to develop new insights and find your soul's purpose. The Lightwalker's Path is a great place to meet with me for inspiration and for discussions. You can also find our replays on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many streaming platforms. And I really look forward to seeing everyone each week and to have you call in and have wonderful discussions with you. Today's discussion is going to be on the divine realm. But before we delve right into that, last week we touched upon hidden gifts, and I was hoping that you were thinking about things that you did as a child that maybe you've forgotten about that you could do now. So as you listen to the podcast, I'm going to try to entice you to think about some of the things that you used to do and maybe have courage to explore them again. We also mentioned the energy field, and I was talking about the aura. And I found something really interesting that I had channeled years ago that just hit the spot with that message. And I wanted to fit it in last week, but I'm going to read it to you today. So I channeled this message back in 1999, and I was asking about the aura. And this message was from the seventh ray known as Saint Germain. So I'll just read the little section of it. The body is merely a carriage for the house and the soul of light. Light is bent and refracted through conscious and unconscious thought through the body vehicle. The soul, hence, is colored in different ways. And I asked, what is an aura? It is the astral body. It is a piece of soul. It is the combination of the healer's thoughts, the person's thoughts, light blended together in balance, and it is the balance of all colors. The perfect light is white light. And then there's a little bit more after that. So if you're interested in that message, I'll probably have it posted up on my website within the next week. But what's really cool is that today I want to touch upon the soul, and I want to explain like what my understanding is and things I've learned through both my dreams and from channeling. And it's perfectly fine if some of this doesn't resonate with you, if it doesn't fit with what you currently believe. Just keep an open mind. And I always say it's perfectly fine if you don't see the things that I do, or you see it a different way. Everyone has their own path and their own purpose and their own belief system. So I really want you just to explore what resonates with you. So one of the things that I always like to see, I like analogies because it makes things easier for me to understand and hopefully for you to understand. When I think of the term God, I don't think of the man on the hill. Okay, I think of this giant energy field known as the God force. And the way I look at it is God is the ocean. So if you think of an ocean, okay, a huge, gigantic ocean, and as the ocean evaporates, it goes into the clouds, and then the clouds rain down as simple drops of water. If you think about it, like we all have this one droplet inside of us, which is known as our soul. So this big God force of light energy, rains down on all these little souls that are born on earth. And we all have that one droplet of God energy in us. That's our soul. Our purpose when you're here on earth, as far as I understand it, is to grow in spirit, to learn from your life lessons, your mistakes, people you've been with, people you meet along the way. You take those lessons and they create understanding in your soul, which therefore creates more light energy in you. When you pass over, this piece of soul goes back to the giant ocean of the God force energy. And people all over the world have different names for this big force of energy. We might call it universal energy, the God force, universal consciousness, the other side, heaven. There's all different names for it. And I don't think you need to get caught up with semantics of what the correct name is, because I believe that there are many paths on the earth to find this God force and to find the God within us that connects with the divine. And the divine is what I'm going to talk about today. All right. So the divine energy we know as God, higher power. So with all of us, we do have a piece of soul. This links to your higher self. Your higher self is the best of your soul and all it's ever learned and all it ever was. It's kind of like the jewels. It's like the best part of who you are, and it's the wisest part of who you are. With that oversoul, this higher self, it links up to your guardian angel who's born in with you. So this angel comes like linked in with you, knowing your path and knowing what's in your blueprint for this lifetime. And that's something I'll explain also. Angels, or your guardian angel, is kind of like your helper. It's always with you. It links up to you. It knows your path. It knows your weaknesses. It knows your strengths. And its main job is to make sure that you don't check out before you're supposed to. So if you bungee cord without a bungee cord, that's on you. But sometimes your angels will be there to kind of help you. If you have a situation where you could be in danger, your guardian angel might give you like a feeling like run, turn the steering wheel, don't go there. And you're going to get kind of this inner feeling that you should or shouldn't do something. You might call it consciousness. You might call it your conscience. But this angel is attached to your intuition and your intuitive insight. Now, I want to tell you that we all have intuition, but if you're really an overthinker, you will doubt it every time. You're going to overthink if you're making it up, and you are not going to listen to that inner guidance that is there to help you. So the more open you are to your intuition, the more guided you will be, and the more on track your life will become. So, you can kind of keep that in mind because those are some of the concepts I'll be hitting with this podcast. Okay. Excuse me. Your angel can visit you, can manifest with help and assist. They will not usually like show themselves in front of you because that's not their purpose. They're not all about, glory and look at me, look at me. It's all about that quiet guidance that guides you internally. They can assist, they can help you. But again, if something is your life lesson and that you're meant to learn in a difficult way, they really can't assist. So just know that they're there to do not only the best for you, but they follow God's will. Okay, angels are energy helpers and beings that are made of energy. Now, if you think about it, our soul and our inner self we are energetic beings in this physical form. We are in the dense, closest place on earth, and we are here because we're experiencing the physical, the five senses, eating, smelling, tasting, touching. We're here to experience this realm, but really our soul's purpose is energetic, and it is connected to your life path, which is from God and from whatever you call this God energy that's in you. We talked about special gifts people have, and like some children have these amazing gifts to be really linked into the other side, and sometimes we have that disconnect when we're born here. So I had one interesting memory. I don't know if I shared this on the first podcast, but I remember I was about 2 years old. And I know this because the kitchen table was way over my head and I was really tiny. And I remember looking up at the table and looking up at my parents. And my mother is like chatting it up with me. And she's kind of talking to me as if I'm a child. Now, obviously, I was about 2 years old. And I remember looking at her and I was really confused. And I'm like, why is she talking to me like I'm an infant? Clearly, I'm an adult. And I remember having that thought. And the other thought I remember is I looked down at my body and I remember clearly saying, oh, I'm back. And it was very strange because at that age, you don't have any background information from the age of 0 to 2 that you'd say, oh, I might be reincarnated. This might be another life. Oh, what do I know? You know nothing at that age. And what's cool about it is that I have a really clear memory of that experience. I also remember visualizing myself wearing a white caftan. and I was only a little person. So, I've never seen that. I didn't see it on our four channels that we had on television at the time. So it was strange. My family was Roman Catholic, so it didn't match anything I ever heard or I had heard my parents talk about either. So some of these really early experiences kind of guided me to seek as I got older. Another weird experience that I had as a child is I remember crawling around on the floor in diapers, and I remember leaving my body and flying around on the ceiling above myself. And as soon as I had the conscious thought, how can I do this? I remember slamming back into my body, and that's the last time I was able to do that. And you might know that as like astral traveling or whatever, but I know children are really close and connected to the other side, especially when they're young. And because I had these really early memories, it just stayed with me as an adult. So you might want to wonder why some gifts open for people at certain times of life. And often they happen under trauma, under, a severe life situation that occurs for you. For me, I was really lucky because a lot of these gifts I always had really young, and I just kept exploring as I got older. Although I didn't talk about it, until I got older, these things were always there, like under the radar. Just I knew they were there. I couldn't quite explain it, and I really didn't have anybody to tell about it. But they're always there for us. And at some point, some people will have a spontaneous gift open. Maybe they had a divorce, a trauma, an accident, a life situation that caused the gift to repop, to open up at a certain point in time. And I do believe this might have been written in your blueprint, which I will explain in a little while. So blueprint is kind of like this life plan for you. Last week, I also mentioned something about examining your colors and what you love, what colors you feel comfortable in. And I just wanted to touch one or two more of those because there's a few I didn't go to. So those people that imagine the color pink, they're in a pink room, they love wearing pink. That is a desire to open up to be more loving or to accept more love into your life. If you are seeing the color blue, okay, and blue is your calm color. Blue is a communication color. It means that you need to speak more to enjoy the concept of letting people know who you are, or you may want to share, or you might have a gift for communication. So colors, which are also in our aura and also part of what the colors we love, can also guide you to some inner information that you may have missed. If you're a person that wears black a lot, black is a protection color. People that enjoy wearing black all the time, I have to wear a black shirt, black pants, black this, black that. Those are people that are kind of trying to energetically shield. They really they want this boundary between them and other people, and it makes them feel safe. And if you think about this, if you're Roman Catholic and you've been to churches, you'll notice that the priests wear black. It's almost like they're deflecting the negative energy of the people that they are trying to help, which is kind of strange, but black is a protective color. It's also the color of the void. So I'll go into that too in a little while. All right. So before we stop again, I'd like you to just close your eyes and imagine yourself in a room. And today, your color might be different than last week. I'd like you to imagine the color that resonates with you. How do you feel calm? How do you feel safe? Think of the color that you're wearing. Think of the colors that you're drawn to when you see them. All right, imagine those colors. Or you can jot it down. And next time you could email me and I could supply an answer to you. But I want you to think of that color that you're feeling or that you might need. You can also ask your angels, what color do I need today? You might get an answer. You need pink. You need blue. You need yellow. All right, think of whatever comes in for you and take that as your answer. Okay? All right. I had an angel message, which I'm going to read to you shortly. I think we're coming up on a break pretty soon, so I'm going to save that. And what I'd like you to do is I want you to think of your own concept of what you think or what you call heaven, or what you call God, all right? It's in all different cultures, so you might have a different understanding of it, or in fact, you might have completely turned away from that idea. So I want you to consider what you believe as your higher power, or if you don't have that belief, okay? Whatever it is, and that's fine. Okay, so I want you to think of that question, and I want you to come back to me in a few minutes. While you're doing that, I want you to just close your eyes for 1 minute and imagine that you were able to ask your angel anything at all, that you were able to ask God any question. And I want you to think about what it would be. Okay? And after the break that's coming up pretty soon, I'm going to read a short angel message that I channeled in 1999, and I want to share that with you. So make sure that you please come back and don't go too far away, because I do want to tell you about this angel message that I got years ago, and you could think about it and see if any of it resonates with you. All right? So remember, this is the Lightwalker's Path. Don't go too far. We'll be back shortly. Hi there. Welcome back. You're listening to the Lightwalker's Path. I'm Rosemary, your host. And in the first section, the first segment, we were talking about the connection of divine, and that we're all light beings inside this body. And we talked about a color that resonates with you. So if you had a color that you were thinking of, like black, we talked about black being a protection color, blue being the color of communication, pink being the color of needing more love in your life, and yellow. Yellow has a couple different meanings. Some people that are really analytical will feel very comfortable with yellow or wanting to wear it or see it. It's also a color of happiness, as I think of sunflowers and such. All right, I promised that I was going to read a message that I channeled back in 1999. I have a lot of these because I've done lots of channeling since 1993. And a couple things. Once I was asking about what is the land of spirit like? And I was basically talking about the other side, heaven, whatever we call that. And this is the message I got. The light is in all. Those of flesh, that means when you're born as a human, have a vague memory of its beauty. Many humans try to recapture heaven or what they remember through art, music, and song. One of the ways to reconnect back with the divine is through art and song and music and things like that. And then my question was, I'm told there are buildings there. You know, I've heard about like mansions, the mansions of heaven and such. So I asked about it. Yes, your thought forms create matter. Mind consciousness creates places that are familiar to the human. So when you cross over, you can be in that familiar place. The mind, in conjunction with the mind of God, is an awesome power. It's like a high intensity thought form working with you for your highest good. I also asked something about being sad, because one day I was channeling, I'm like, I feel sad today. So here's what I got. Your nadis are not clear. Now, I didn't know what that word was. So of course I'm looking it up. And I found that a nadis is a name for a nerve bundle that's in your spine. And many times when we're under stress, some of this stuff gets kind of like packed up and not clear. That's why people that do yoga are, can be more clear. They're stretching their spine. The energy is moving and flowing in the body clearer. And I was told that sadness can block wisdom because you get stuck in mind energy. You can still clear it with earth and song. So that was interesting, because I was thinking of like Native American cultures, how they do a lot of dancing and singing and how that clears energy. And a lot of the world cultures use dance and song as a form of prayer. The great Sufis in the Middle East, they would twirl in circles, and they would twirl and twirl and twirl, and it would put the mind into a different state. So they were able to pray and really reflect on prayer, and then it would put them into like a different zone. I asked about the name of the angel. This was interesting. And I was told names are not important here. We will tell you one if you need it, but we are of light and we are of God. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they'll tell you a name, if it helps you call on them, but they don't really need a name because they are of God. They're a piece of God and they're more pure than us. I asked about the levels because I've heard that there's like levels of heaven, and I couldn't get my mind around like what this meant. So what they showed me, and I'll read this to you too, but what they showed me was concentric rings. So you have the earth in the center, and then you have rings of like almost like if you think you throw a stone in a pond and it makes this big ring, like a bullseye kind of thing. The closest level is like the earth. That's the physical plane. Right next to earth, you have what's called the astral plane. The astral is the densest level. Usually, that's the level that you'd say people are caught in. That might be like the ghost realm or where thought forms go. So here's what they told me. I said, "What is the lowest? The lowest level?" Simply the lowest and densest vibration exists right around the earth. Souls are not kept out of heaven or the divine realm, although their nature and the quality of the soul can make it more buoyant. So if you think of a balloon floating up, it's really buoyant. So a dense soul is kind of heavier. It's kind of like lead, it stays close to the ground because it is not accepting enough light to make it buoyant. Okay. Much in the way a hot air balloon is filled, the more buoyant a soul, the more it can transcend different levels to get to the higher realms. Though heaven is not just up, it is out like a concentric ring. It's an overlay of other layers of this energy. The most dense matter is the earth, and it is the bullseye. It is the center. Those souls that choose to learn through experience, through love, through lessons, are more buoyant. Okay, and you're also considered courageous when you learn from a difficult earth lesson. Okay, so what that tells you is that some souls, when they cross over, decide not to go into the tunnel. They might not have a belief in the afterlife, but even if they don't have one, they're given a choice. Okay, we're going to bring you through this tunnel and go through the tunnel. Some people will just say, no, no, I want to stay with my house, with my possessions, with my ego. And they get stuck. And a stuck part of a soul is called a ghost, right? It's near the astral plane and it doesn't move further. It doesn't mean they're stuck there forever. It just means until their ego allows them to say, you know what, I want more. They're stuck there for now, temporarily. Okay. Um, One of the things I asked, about that, I said, okay, if a soul is stuck and it doesn't cross over into the divine realm, how does it get there? And what I was told is, as soon as a soul agrees to learn more, to let go of their ego, the angels will basically pull them through the tunnel. They'll grab the arms on each side and they'll say, okay, let's go. Once they cross through that tunnel, they're in a different realm. And that realm is considered the divine realm. So anything after the astral begins to be the divine realm. The divine realm will have your deceased loved ones. It will have people that you might have known from another life. It might have pets there. And I just want to share a story with you because I was about 7 or 8 and I was really curious about what heaven was like. And I remember going to sleep asking my angel, can you show me the other side? So here's what happened. In my dream, and I was a child at the time, I was brought through a tunnel. So they showed me a tunnel. Okay, then they showed me the other side. And what I saw first was a grassy field. I saw a picket fence, okay, with a lot of grass. Then right past it, I saw a lot of people mulling around. I saw brilliant flowers. And the colors were none like I've ever seen. They were brilliantly colored. They had like luminescence that they don't have on Earth that I've ever seen. The next thing, I had apparently an angel or a guide next to me. I couldn't see who or what this being looked like, only that it had my hand and it was bringing me on this little adventure trip.
The next thing I asked was, well, how do people learn things? Like what's next? And what I remember is I was pulled up to this room and it looked like a giant library. It was really, 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 really tall. And I remember floating, floating, floating up, up, up. And there was a bookshelf and it had scrolls and books. And I was able to grab one of the scrolls and try to look at it and read it. And I heard this booming voice say to me, when you're an adult, you'll be able to read these to help people. And then I remember putting the scroll back. My next question was, what happens when a soul doesn't accept God? And I remember they showed me, I went down into like, it looked like caverns, like, like the earth had like a cave. And I remember like going down this cave and I remember the guide or angel saying, you're safe, you're with me. And I remember going through these different levels, and I was told stubborn people often wind up here. And I remember seeing these people with these like this bull, like a head like a bull with these horns. And it was very strange. And I'm like, well, why are they here? And I was told they were so stubborn that they didn't want to open up their beliefs. So that's why they're here. They're still learning. But as soon as they learn, we're going to bring them through. And then they brought me all the way through. And then I remember waking up. And, later in life, I remember researching something about like Greek mythology. And I didn't know this till I was about 17, 18, that they have these stories of the mythos where they have these bull-headed people. And I'm like, wow, that's cool because I remember dreaming of that when I was a little girl. And now here it was again. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So there are different beliefs. So my particular understanding, and this might differ for you in my listening audience, but my understanding is that your soul has a choice when it passes over. You even have a choice sometimes if it is your time to go or your time to stay. And I will tell you that I also saw this from many of the past life things on YouTube that I've watched about people that have crossed over and come back. They're always kind of given a choice. If it's not their time, they're told, well, you have to go back. Or they may say, if you go back, you're going to be in a lot of pain, but do you want to go back or do you want to stay? And a soul is given a choice. So I thought that was very interesting. In my life, I had a couple like weird experiences early on. I remember when I was about, I don't know, 6 or 7, I was in the car with my mom, and back in the day, there was no seatbelts, so we were in the back seat, no seatbelt. I'm sitting there, and we went somewhere where my car door was kind of propped, and it wasn't completely shut. I don't know if I did it or what it was, but my mom was always real careful with me. But what happened was I was leaning against the door, all right, and I pushed against the door, and I rolled out onto a busy street, and that was really kind of scary. But I'll tell you what happens after the break, because we're coming up very soon on a commercial break. So don't go away. As soon as the break ends, I'm going to bring you back and I'm going to tell you what happened next. And then another weird experience I had where I could have crossed over and I didn't. I had two more exit points that I didn't cross over. So please come back. You can get a glass of water. Remember, you're listening to The Lightwalker's Path, Grow Your Spirit with Rosemary. Welcome back. You're listening to The Lightwalker's Path, Grow Your Spirit with Rosemary. So thank you for staying with me for this podcast today. And we were talking about the divine realm. And I was mentioning some unusual situations where I could have checked out to the other side, but thank goodness it wasn't my time and I stayed. So I was about 6 years old, and as I was saying, these cars had no seatbelts back in the day. I know I'm aging myself here, but I was leaning against the door, and the door flung open, and I fell onto a really busy street. My mother was beside herself with panic. She pulled over, because we were on a really busy road, and another person pulled to kind of protect me from getting run over. And I remember whacking my head on a sidewalk. And, I remember going in the ambulance and they were checking me. And I actually I was fine. But it's one time when, something could have happened. It wasn't my time, so the case closed. I was great, right? The next time happened when I was in my 30s. I was having an operation. I was getting a biopsy actually. And while I was under, apparently after the doctor hit a main artery and I started bleeding. So they took me back in the hospital 2 days later. And the doctor was in a panic because he said to me, he hit a main artery and I was bleeding to death. Wasn't my time, so I'm fine. So that was the second time. I've had other things. Years ago, I was on a plane and the plane had a near miss. And I know this because the pilot came over and said, we had a near miss with another airplane. So, that's time number three. So what I understand, and I don't know for a fact if this is true, this is just what I've heard, is that you have a certain amount of exit points before the final one. The final one is, okay, it's your time and you're done. Before that, you have exit points. So I wanted to go over just a few different words about what different things are. And I wanted to just go through this with you. So people often confuse concepts like what's a guide, what's an angel, what are spirits that crossed over. So the one thing I want to tell you is like an angel is an energy being that does God's will and has not been human. Okay, so an angel is an angel is an angel. All right. So I channel angels. So I work with the divine realm and I get their information. What's a guide? A guide was a person that was human and has exceptional understanding and wisdom. A guide gets kind of like positive or good karma or good points for helping a human on earth. Now, if my vibration is really low, okay, let's say I'm a very negative person, my guide can't be an extremely high vibration guide because our energies are not in sync. So the more that I learn and the more that my vibration raises, the guide I get will change or be a higher transcendent guide. So when I ask for a guide energy to step in, I always ask for a sacred guide with my best interest at heart. Okay, a sacred and divine guide, because those words will form like what steps into my energy field. I've always worked with angels. Their vibration is really high and very, very clear. There's no ego attached with them. So I was working with the angel realm before I even allowed guides to step in and tell me anything. I wanted to be able to discern the energy of the two. Guide energy is interesting. You may wonder, and people have asked me, oh, does that mean my grandmother is a guide, or my father is a guide, or my mother's a guide? They could be, but chances are they're just really loving beings that, your ancestor beings that love you, and they can help you, but they weren't gone from Earth for too long. So they have more of a human viewpoint than maybe a guide who's been on the other side for a long, long time. All right. The other thing I was going to say is when people cross over, I've helped a few people doing Reiki on them before they died, one including my father. And my father, I actually felt his soul kind of leave through the top of his head, and I felt that he did not want to cross over until my sister arrived from out of state. And I actually knew he was still in the room with me. So what I did, and this sound, I know it sounds creepy, but he died at my mom's house where he lived for 60 years. And I remember talking to him while he was deceased in the room. And I stayed with him the whole time, just talking to him as if he was there because I felt his energy was there. And as soon as my sister said goodbye to him, I felt his energy leave the room. And I don't know if I ever shared that with my sister because I didn't want to creep her out too much, but but that's what I felt. I also heard Native American Indians like dancing and singing in the room. My father always had this kind of strange connection with nature, and he always loved the Native American culture, even though we're Italian, right? But he had this connection with it. So I felt them in the room too. So he did go through the light. Once he crossed over, oh my goodness, my father gave me so much information about the other side in my dreams, which were verified by my mom. So, okay, so he was a spirit. And yes, he can visit through dreams. Now, people may wonder, like, why doesn't my mom or dad or my sister visit me all the time? They don't really have to. They are always there in their loving energy around you. And I'm going to go into more of this with, I have a guest next week. I have a psychic medium, the Montclair medium, Chris Lippincott, and he's going to be my guest next week. And he has a lot of information about guide energy and about people on the other side, because that's what he does for his thing, his job. So he'll be my guest, and you can certainly listen in and find out things that I'm not filling in for you today. But a spirit is what I call a person that crosses over. So that might be your grandmother, your mother, your father, loved ones that you know. Those are the people that'll greet you when you cross over, if you were close to them. A ghost is a spirit that is in the astral plane that does not choose to cross over at the time of death, but they can certainly do so later on. They have that choice. It's their free will. Free will is really important. Okay, thought forms. I mentioned that at the astral plane. So every time you have a thought, whether it be positive or negative, it creates energy. We are all attached by soul and by energy. So if I have bad thoughts and talk bad about people, my grandmother used to say, you're giving them the malocchia. She would have like the hand, the Italian hand and a horn. She says that protects you. You'll get a headache if someone talks bad about you. That's what she believed. But really, truthfully, if you send bad energy in the form of thoughts towards someone, you're actually creating an energetic link to them, and it doesn't help you and it doesn't help them. So before you have these negative thoughts, it's really best to say, it's in God's hands, I bless them, rather than sending negative vibes or thoughts someone's way. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. It doesn't change the energy between them. In fact, it can cause an energetic cord between you and that person that you're trying to not be attached to. A thought form winds up in the astral plane. Now, so I've seen this astral plane many times in dreams. It's gray. There's spirits walking around. They're like clueless. They don't know they're there. You bump into them. They're just clueless. It's kind of like being in a state of non-awareness. Thought forms are also there. So, the scary stuff of nightmares, that's there too. Why? Because it's a strong thought form that got caught in the low vibration field called the astral. That's not heaven. That's not the divine realm. That's below it. That's kind of like the sludge underneath this beautiful, buoyant energy above it. So they are there. Negative thought forms are there. So other things I've done, I've seen souls wandering around in the astral, and I've had the opportunity and the ability to know when I'm dreaming, and that's called has a name. It's escaping me right now. But when you're aware during the dream state, there's a name for that, and I'll think of it next time or after the break. But when you're aware in a dream state, you can change what's happening in a dream, and you can also control the outcome of what's happening. So when I go to the astral and I'm aware, and I see people wandering around, I'm like, you're dead. You've got to cross over. What are you doing here? And I've tried that. And many times they'll look with like no awareness in their face at all. Other times I've seen things to try to scare me off my path. And those are kind of like these scary thought forms with red eyes. And I just hold my hand up and say, you have no power over me. Be gone. This is, I'm just visiting here. This isn't my realm. And I just try to send them away. And that seems to work because I don't allow the fear to take me. Excuse me. So fear has a strong energy imprint. When you're in the state of love, you're not in the state of fear at the same time. When you're in a vibration of love, you're not in the vibration of being mean or unhappy. The two can't exist together. So what I would tell you is when you are in a state of fear, say a prayer. Even if you don't know if it's going to be answered, say just God help me. Or you can say, surround me with love. I'm in the state of love, or surround me with peace. Any of those kind of things will give you a different vibration than fear or sadness or or being upset about something. Okay. Um, excuse me. I had a really nice experience with a little girl that came into my office a couple years ago. And she was about 12 or 13 at the time. And she walked into my room and she started to cry. And I'm like, "Why are you crying?" And she says, "My angel is in your healing room. I haven't seen her in years, but we used to talk every day when I was a little girl. But she's in there." And I asked her, "Why are you there and not with me?" And she said, "I'm watching and I'm helping as people are getting Reiki." And so she gave me that message, and I thought that was a beautiful message that she shared with me. Okay, so the divine realm. What I understand happens is when you cross over, you go through this tunnel. The tunnel is kind of like a portal to the other side, which is the higher realms. You are greeted by your loved ones, people you were close to, even people that you recognize in a deceased state, but you might not know, like in the here and now. Maybe they were people from other lifetimes. All right. And also, you may see your pets, which are also there for you. And then they bring you into orientation, which I will complete talking about after the upcoming break. We've got a quick break. So I will also tell you what I learned from my father about orientation and about life lessons, which I thought was pretty cool. And I'll share some of his insights that he told me after he crossed over, and some strange experiences I've had with people doing energy work on them. So we're about like maybe 30 seconds out or something from a break pretty soon, but I want you to keep in mind stories you might have heard from people that you might know, and then I will share mine with you. And we're coming up on a break. Don't go away. I want you to hear the next part and have some good thoughts. Send me some good vibes. Welcome back. This is the Lightwalker's Path, Grow Your Spirit with Rosemary, and I'm glad you stayed with me. So I was mentioning what happens when a soul crosses over. So I was talking about my father because apparently we were really connected, and he gave me a lot of dreams and information after he crossed over, which gave me a lot of confidence to know that we really are fine when we go there. And it really made my heart happy to know things that he was telling me. So the first weird thing that happened is I woke up and I looked next to my bed, and there was a bright, shiny penny on the ground next to my bed where it was not when I went to sleep. And I knew that was a message from Dad saying, "Hey, look, I'm sending you a penny. I'm fine." So the other thing that happened was the day after he passed, like that night, I had a dream of Dad. And Dad said to me, "Don't worry, everything's great." He says, "I just closed my eyes and I was here." And then he said, "I love the tux you picked out for me. It was the right one." Because I remember the day I was trying to get what to wear, like in the, when he was laid out, there was 3 different suits. So I picked the one that had the fancy shirt on it. My father loved to look nice. So he complimented that that was just the right suit that he was wearing. At his wake, I remember, and this is, excuse me for all the Catholic and Christians out there, but my father was a card and he had a great sense of humor. And I remember hearing his voice and he's saying, "Can you play Tony Bennett music?" And I'm like, "Dad, it's religious. I don't know." So I asked the priest, "Can we, play some music that Dad liked?" And the priest was like, "No, no, no, no. No, no. We have to play religious music here." So I remember my father, like I heard his voice and he said, "Man," he goes, "I'm the stiff, but this guy's got no sense of humor." And I was just like, all I could do not to laugh because that was so much my dad. He'd poke fun. Nobody was sacred from my dad's sense of humor. So that happened. The next night, I said to him, "Dad, why did you go?" And then I fell asleep. The next morning, there was another penny by my bed, but this one had no front or back on it. It was completely beat up. And I know that was his message saying, "I'm worn out." I couldn't stay. I was too worn out. He also showed me the orientation, and what the angels told me was I'd know when he would pass, and they did show that to me, so I knew the day that he was going to go. And they showed me the table, and around the table was my father, and there were some guides, some people, and a couple angels. And they were saying, "Now, Sam, You did really good, but there's a couple things we got to talk about. One was this gluttony and this food issue you had. And my father's like, nodding his head, and then they pulled me away from the table and they said, you can observe from here, don't go near the tunnel. And in the distance, I saw like a tunnel of light and I wasn't allowed to go near it. Other dreams I had of my dad, he would tell me messages and he'd go, tell mom how to make stew. And I'm like, Dad, you had to make stew? He goes, yeah, tell mama how to make stew. So the next day I call mom. I go, Mom, I don't, this is a weird message. And I might have just made it up. I said, but I dreamt of Dad and he told me that he had to make stew on the other side. So my mother was starting to cry. She said, last night I was making lamb stew and Dad used to love my lamb stew. And I said, he'll never eat my stew again. What's he going to do on the other side? So that was my dad's message to mom. So I thought that was really neat. And it proved to me a couple things. One is that consciousness doesn't go away once we cross over, it stays with us. And I thought that was like amazing to know. The other thing is that we are given a life review. And some things my father couldn't tell me. Like in my dream state, I'd be conscious. I'd be visiting with my father. I'm like, Dad, what can you tell me? Did you see your mother? Did you see? And I'm asking him questions. He's like, well, I saw my mother and I saw relatives, but there's certain things I can't tell you. I can't tell you everything about this site. I'm not allowed. And he showed me, different experiences that they allowed him to know. One day he showed up in a dream and, he was overweight when he passed and he had cancer. So he showed me himself in front of me. He was about 50 pounds lighter. And I looked at him. I said, Dad, you look really good. He goes, well, you see this body? He said, and he had his finger in his belt loop. He goes, I would have looked like this if I didn't have this obsession eating food all the time. He said, I would have been fit and I would have probably lived a much healthier life. And, that kind of was interesting to me. The other thing Dad showed me was, his family members. He said, we had a party over here. He said, I saw my mother and I saw like my brothers and sisters. We had a party. And one of the dreams I had, I was watching them and they were all like eating food. And there was this big plate of baked goods that my aunt was a wonderful baker, my Aunt Teresa. And she came to the table. She goes, Sam, she goes, look what I made for us. And she had these like all these Italian like pastries on there. So that day I called my cousin. I said, listen, I said, I had a dream of your mom, Teresa. I said, and I wanted to tell you about it because I know that you might be thinking about her. And my cousin is in tears and she's like, oh my God. She says, I was crying. I was crying so hard about mom. And I was wondering what she's doing on the other side. And I felt really sad, and I said, listen, I said, your mom is baking cookies and she's at the table with your father and with my father and with the brothers and sisters. I said, they're having a party. And she goes, you know what? She goes, it's my mother's birthday. And she said, and I was crying about her, wondering what she was doing over there. So again, it just brought joy to my heart knowing that we're okay and that the other side is a beautiful place and you could still connect with loved ones. Okay. One of the concepts I want you to also know is that we have free will. We have free will here and we have free will on the other side to a certain degree. Free will meaning that you have your lessons that you have here and you have a choice to either learn them or not learn them. You have a choice of path. All right. We're 1 minute out from break, so I'll be breaking in about a minute from now. But your life path is not a straight line. It goes in curves. We often get away from our path and we come back to it. So I just want you to know that your free will is really important and that your decisions on earth really do affect your next stage of your journey here and on the other side. So you always have that at your disposal to learn or not learn.
I'm your host, Rosemary DiTrolio, and you've been watching and listening to The Lightwalker's Path. Learn about my workshops, sessions, courses, and more at info@rosemaryd.com. My website, rosemaryd.com, Hands of Light by Rosemary. Have a blessed and beautiful day.